Why are you back at this hour? Korean Mafia boss explodes with jealousy when his black woman arrived late. The penthouse door clicked shut at 2:51 am. Nadia Brooks slipped inside like a shadow, her worn sneakers dangling from one hand, her body screaming for rest. The marble floor was cold beneath her aching feet. Every muscle protested as she moved through the darkened foyer, past the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Manhattan's glittering skyline. She just needed to reach her room. Just needed to. Where have you been? Her heart stopped. The voice came from the living room, low and precise, cutting through the silence like a blade. Nadia froze, her breath catching in her throat. She turned slowly, squinting into the darkness, and saw him. Victor Hahn sat motionless in the leather armchair by the window, his silhouette outlined by the city lights behind him. He hadn't turned on a single lamp. He'd been sitting there in the dark, waiting. His hands rested on the armrests, fingers slightly curled, his posture rigid with controlled tension. Even in shadow, his presence filled the space with an intensity that made the air feel thin. I asked you a question. His voice was quieter now, which somehow made it worse. Where were you? Nadia's mind raced. Her throat was dry, her tongue thick with exhaustion and panic. She clutched her shoes tighter, feeling the worn rubber soles crumble slightly under her grip. I went for a walk. I couldn't sleep. The lie tasted bitter. She watched Victor's jaw tighten, saw the slight movement of his head as he processed her words. He didn't believe her. Of course he didn't believe her. But he didn't challenge her either. Not yet. At this hour, he said slowly. In this city, you went for a walk. It wasn't a question. It was a statement that hung between them, heavy with disbelief and something else. Something that sounded almost like fear. Nadia nodded, not trusting her voice. The seconds stretched out, excruciating. Finally, Victor stood. He was tall, his frame outlined against the window, and as he stepped toward her, she saw his face for the first time. His dark eyes were fixed on hers, searching, analyzing. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were clenched at his sides. Go to bed, he said quietly. We'll talk in the morning. She didn't wait for him to change his mind. Nadia turned and walked as steadily as she could toward her room, feeling his gaze burning into her back with every step. Only when her door closed behind her did she let herself collapse against it, her whole body trembling. She slid down to the floor, shoes falling from her numb fingers, and pressed her hands over her face. This couldn't continue. She knew it couldn't continue. But what choice did she have? 6 hours earlier, Nadia had been standing behind the counter at Ruth's Corner Bakery in Redfield District, her hands covered in flour, her apron stained with chocolate and exhaustion. The overhead fluorescents buzzed and flickered, casting harsh shadows across the cramped workspace. The smell of rising dough mixed with the acrid scent of burnt coffee that never quite left the air. Table 4 needs another round, Ruth Alvarez called from the kitchen, her voice gravelly from decades of cigarettes and late nights. She was a stocky woman in her 50s with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face lined with hard-earned wisdom. And don't let Marcus leave without paying this time. I don't care what sob story he gives you. Nadia had nodded, wiping her hands on her apron as she grabbed the coffee pot. Her vision swam slightly. She'd been on her feet for 7 hours already, and her shift didn't end until 3. Her back ached. Her feet felt like they were walking on broken glass. But she smiled as she approached table 4, where 3 construction workers sat hunched over pie and coffee, their faces drawn with their own fatigue. This was her secret. This was the life she'd built in the shadows, the one Victor Hahn knew nothing about. By day, she was his housekeeper, maintaining his pristine Upper West Side penthouse with quiet efficiency. By night, she was a bakery worker in one of Manhattan's roughest neighborhoods, earning money that barely made a dent in the crushing debt that haunted her every waking moment. $49,300. That's what her father's final year of life had cost. That's what the cancer treatments, the hospital stays, the medications, the desperate hope had added up to. She'd held his hand as he died. And then she'd held the bills, watching the numbers climb with interest and late fees until they felt less like debt and more like a life sentence. Her salary from Victor was $68,000 a year. To anyone else, it would seem generous. But after taxes, after rent for the tiny studio apartment she kept but rarely used, after minimum payments that barely touched the principal, after food and subway fare and the relentless accumulation of survival costs, there was nothing left. The collectors called daily. The interest climbed. The walls closed in. So she'd found the bakery. She'd found Ruth, who asked no questions and paid cash under the table. She'd found a way to survive that was slowly killing her. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Morning came too soon. Nadia dragged herself from bed at 7, her body protesting every movement. She'd slept for barely 3 hours, and even that had been fitful. Her dreams filled with Victor's voice asking questions she couldn't answer. She showered quickly, letting the hot water pound against her shoulders, trying to wash away the fatigue that clung to her bones. When she looked in the mirror, she saw the dark circles under her eyes, the hollow look that no amount of concealer could hide, the way her collarbones jutted out more sharply than they had a month ago. She was disappearing, piece by piece, and she didn't know how to stop it. By 7:30, she was in the kitchen, preparing Victor's breakfast. Coffee, black, precisely 185 degrees. 2 eggs over easy. Whole grain toast, lightly buttered. Sliced strawberries on the side. He knew his routine better than her own, had learned his preferences through months of careful observation. The kitchen was her domain in daylight hours, stainless steel and marble and soft morning light filtering through gauzy curtains. It was beautiful, expensive, everything she'd never had growing up. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. Victor moved with a predator's grace, silent until he wanted to be heard. He entered the kitchen dressed for work in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire debt. His dark hair perfectly styled, his expression neutral. But his eyes found hers immediately, and she saw the question still lingering there. "Good morning," she said quietly, setting his plate on the breakfast bar. Her hands didn't shake. She'd learned long ago how to hide her fear. "Nadia." He sat, but he didn't touch the food. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. "I have a lot to do today. The guest rooms need. They can wait." His voice was firm but not harsh. "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Nadia pulled out the stool across from him, her pulse hammering in her ears. She folded her hands in her lap to keep them still, her spine straight, her face carefully composed. She'd spent her whole life learning how to hide what she felt, how to protect herself with silence and small smiles and the appearance of composure. Victor studied her for a long moment. "You're exhausted," he said finally. "You've lost weight. You're not sleeping." He paused. "And you're lying to me." The words hit like a physical blow, but Nadia kept her expression neutral. "I'm fine," she said. "I appreciate your concern, but where were you last night?" He leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes intense. "And please don't insult my intelligence with another walk story." Nadia's mind raced. She could feel the carefully constructed walls of her double life cracking, threatening to collapse entirely. "I had some personal business to take care of," she said carefully. "It won't happen again." "What kind of personal business requires you to be out until almost 3 in the morning?" "The kind that's personal." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. She saw something flicker in Victor's expression. Surprise, maybe, or hurt. She softened her tone. "I'm sorry. I need you to trust that I'm handling my responsibilities here. My personal time is my own." Victor was quiet for a long moment. "You're right," he said finally. "Your personal time is your own. But I need to know that you're safe. This city, I can take care of myself. Can you? The question was quiet, almost gentle. Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's drowning and refusing to call for help. The observation was too accurate, too close to the truth. Nadia stood abruptly, her stool scraping against the floor. Your breakfast is getting cold, she said, her voice tight. Will there be anything else? She saw the frustration flash across his face, the way his jaw clenched and his hands tightened on the edge of the counter. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled. No, he said quietly. That will be all. Nadia fled to the safety of the laundry room, where she could hide among the pristine white sheets and towels, where the rhythmic sound of the washing machine could drown out the panicked hammering of her heart. She pressed her palms against the cool marble counter, forcing herself to breathe slowly, evenly. She couldn't break down. Not here. Not now. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands and saw the name on the screen. Redfield Credit Solutions. Another call from the debt collectors. She let it go to voicemail, just like she'd done with the 6 calls yesterday and the 5 the day before. They'd leave a message. They always left a message. And the number would climb higher. In his office on the other side of the penthouse, Victor sat at his desk, staring at the untouched breakfast and feeling something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Helplessness. He'd built an empire on reading people, on understanding motivations and leverage points and the subtle tells that revealed a person's truth. He could walk into a room of hardened criminals and make them sweat with a single look. He could broker deals worth millions with a phone call. He could make problems disappear with a word. But he couldn't help one woman who refused to let him in. His desk phone buzzed. Yes, he said curtly. Elias is here to see you, his assistant said. Send him in. Elias Moore entered moments later, carrying 2 coffees and wearing his usual expression of calm competence. He was Victor's right hand, his closest friend, the only person who'd been with him since the beginning. He was in his early 40s, with graying temples and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He set 1 coffee in front of Victor and settled into the chair across from him. You look like hell, Elias observed mildly. I didn't sleep. Waiting up for someone? There was no judgment in Elias's voice, just understanding. Victor took a long drink of coffee, buying himself time. She came home at 2:51 a.m., he said finally. And she lied about where she'd been. Elias's eyebrows rose slightly. You confronted her? I asked questions. She deflected. Victor set down his cup with more force than necessary. She's hiding something, and it's destroying her. She's lost at least 10 pounds. She has circles under her eyes that makeup can't hide. Her hands shake when she thinks I'm not looking. His voice dropped. And I can't do a damn thing about it because she won't let me. So find out what she's hiding, Elias said simply. You have resources. I can't just... Victor stopped, frustrated. It feels wrong. Invasive. More wrong than watching her kill herself slowly? Elias's voice was gentle but firm. Look, I get it. You respect her privacy. But respect doesn't mean standing by while someone suffers. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is take the choice away from someone who's too proud to ask for help. Victor was silent, torn between his desire to protect Nadia and his belief that she had the right to her secrets. What do you suggest? Let me make some calls, Elias said. Quietly. No heavy-handed tactics. I'll find out what's going on, and then you can decide how to handle it. He paused. But Victor? Whatever this is, it's serious. I've seen that look before. That's not just exhaustion. That's desperation. The words settled over Victor like a weight. He thought of Nadia's face that morning, the way she'd flinched when he'd asked about her safety, the brittle quality to her voice when she'd insisted she could handle things. He thought of her standing in his kitchen at 2:51 a.m., shoes in hand, looking like someone who'd run out of places to hide. Do it, he said quietly, but be discreet. I don't want her to feel like I'm hunting her. Elias nodded and stood. I'll have something by tomorrow. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, the fact that you care this much means something. Don't forget that. After he left, Victor sat alone in his office, surrounded by the trappings of power and success, feeling more helpless than he'd felt in years. He'd spent his adult life building walls, maintaining control, keeping emotion at a distance. It was how he'd survived. It was how he'd thrived. But Nadia had slipped past his defenses without even trying, and now he was caught between the person he trained himself to be and the person he was becoming because of her. He pulled up his phone and scrolled to her contact. No last name, just Nadia. With a photo he'd taken without her knowledge one morning when she'd been arranging flowers in the living room. The sunlight had caught her profile, and for just a moment, she'd looked peaceful, happy. He hadn't seen that expression on her face in weeks. His finger hovered over the call button, but he didn't press it. What would he even say? If you're enjoying this story and want to see what happens next, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Your support means everything to us. The day passed in tense silence. Nadia moved through her duties with mechanical precision, cleaning rooms that were already clean, organizing spaces that were already organized. She avoided Victor whenever possible, taking her lunch in her room, finding excuses to be in different parts of the penthouse when she heard his footsteps. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but it was necessary. She couldn't let him see how close she was to breaking. At 4 o'clock, her phone rang again. Redfield Credit Solutions. This time, she answered. Ms. Brooks, this is Jennifer calling from Redfield Credit Solutions regarding your account. The woman's voice was professionally sympathetic, which somehow made it worse. I'm calling to inform you that your account is now 63 days past due. If we don't receive payment within the next 7 days, we'll be forced to pursue legal action. Nadia's hand tightened on the phone. I'm aware of my account status, she said quietly. I'm working on it. I understand this is a difficult time, but we need to establish a payment plan. Your current balance with interest and late fees is $53,800. The number had grown. Of course it had grown. Nadia closed her eyes, feeling the room spin slightly. I'll call back tomorrow to discuss options, she managed. Ms. Brooks, we really need to. Tomorrow, Nadia said firmly, and ended the call. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the phone in her hand. $53,800. The number kept climbing. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how little she slept, she was running as fast as she could, and she was still falling behind. At 10 o'clock that night, she changed into her bakery clothes. Worn jeans, a faded t-shirt, comfortable shoes that had seen better days. She waited until she heard Victor's bedroom door close, then slipped out of the penthouse like a ghost. The subway ride to Redfield District took 40 minutes, and she spent it with her eyes closed, trying to gather her strength for the shift ahead. Ruth's Corner Bakery was a small, tired-looking place squeezed between a pawn shop and a liquor store. The neon open 24 hours sign flickered erratically, and the windows were covered with security bars. But inside, it smelled like fresh bread and possibility. Ruth was already behind the counter when Nadia arrived, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she tallied receipts. You look worse than yesterday, Ruth observed without looking up. Thanks, Nadia said dryly, tying her apron. I'm serious. Ruth set down her pen and studied Nadia over her glasses. How much sleep did you get? Enough. That's not an answer. Ruth's expression softened slightly. Look, I know it's not my business, but you're running yourself into the ground. Whatever you're trying to prove, it's not worth your health. Nadia busied herself with restocking the pastry case. I'm fine, she said. Really? Ruth snorted. You're a terrible liar. She was quiet for a moment, then added, My daughter used to say the same thing. I'm fine, Ma. Don't worry. Right up until she wasn't fine anymore. Her voice went rough. Don't be like her, kid. Don't wait until it's too late to ask for help. The words landed heavily, but Nadia didn't know how to respond. She'd never learned how to ask for help. She'd spent her whole life learning the opposite. How to be small, how to be invisible, how to carry burdens without complaint because complaining changed nothing. Her mother had taught her that. Poverty had reinforced it, and now it was the only way she knew how to survive. The night shift was brutal. A group of drunk college students came in at midnight, loud and demanding, leaving a mess that took 30 minutes to clean. A homeless man tried to sleep in the corner booth until Ruth gently ushered him out with a bag of day-old pastries. A fight broke out on the street outside, sirens wailing, blue lights strobing through the windows. Nadia kept her head down and worked, measuring coffee, wiping tables, smiling at customers who barely saw her. At 2:15 a.m., her feet screaming and her back aching, she was refilling the cream dispenser when the bell over the door chimed. She glanced up automatically, her customer service smile already in place, and froze. Victor Hahn stood in the doorway of Ruth's Corner Bakery, looking completely out of place in his expensive coat and leather shoes. His dark eyes swept the space, taking in the cracked linoleum, the flickering lights, the worn formica counters. Then his gaze found Nadia, and the expression on his face made her heart stop. It wasn't anger. It was devastation. Time seemed to slow down. Nadia stood there, cream dispenser still in her hand, unable to move, unable to speak. She watched Victor's face as understanding settled over him. Understanding of where she'd been, what she'd been doing, why she looked the way she did. She saw him put the pieces together, saw the moment when everything clicked into place. Ruth broke the silence. "We're closed," she said, her voice hard. She'd moved to stand between Victor and Nadia, one hand on the baseball bat she kept behind the counter. "Don't care who you are. Come back during business hours." Victor's eyes never left Nadia's face. "I need to speak with her," he said quietly. "She's working." "Ruth, it's okay." Nadia's voice came out barely above a whisper. She set down the cream dispenser with shaking hands. "I know him." Ruth looked between them, her expression skeptical. "You sure?" Nadia nodded, not trusting herself to say more. Ruth reluctantly stepped aside, though she kept the baseball bat within reach. The other customers, 2 nurses on a break and a delivery driver, watched with undisguised interest. Victor crossed the space between them in 3 strides. Up close, Nadia could see the tight control in his expression, the way his hands were clenched at his sides, the muscle jumping in his jaw. "How long?" he asked, his voice low and strained. "How long have you been doing this?" "For months," she whispered. "For months." He said it like he was testing the words, trying to make them make sense. "You've been working 2 full-time jobs for 4 months. It wasn't a question. That's why you're exhausted. That's why you're—" He stopped, his control cracking slightly. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's not your problem. Not my—" Victor stopped himself, visibly trying to rein in his emotions. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "We need to talk. Privately. I'm working until 3. Then I'll wait." He moved to the corner booth and sat down, his posture rigid, his eyes never leaving her. The remaining 45 minutes of Nadia's shift were the longest of her life. She felt Victor's gaze tracking her every movement, every weary step, every time she had to steady herself against the counter, every forced smile for customers who didn't care. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if he was angry or hurt or something else entirely. She just knew that everything was about to change, and she didn't know if she had the strength to face it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. And don't forget to subscribe for more compelling stories like this one. At 2:55 a.m., Ruth locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. She looked at Nadia, then at Victor, then back to Nadia. "You need me to stay?" she asked quietly. Nadia shook her head. "I'm okay. Call me if you need anything. And I mean anything." Ruth shot Victor a warning look that would have been intimidating to anyone who didn't regularly stare down criminals. I know where you live now. After Ruth left through the back entrance, the bakery felt too small, too quiet. Nadia stood behind the counter, using it as a barrier, as protection. Victor remained in the booth, watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Talk to me, he said finally. Please. The please broke something in her. Nadia felt her careful control start to crumble, felt the exhaustion and fear and desperation she'd been holding back for months start to push through the cracks. What do you want me to say? She asked, her voice cracking. That I've been lying to you? That I'm drowning in debt? That I'm working myself to death because I don't have any other choice. She laughed, but it came out bitter. There. Now you know. Why? Victor's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Why didn't you come to me? And say what? Excuse me, Mr. Hahn. I know you already pay me well, but could you possibly give me $50,000 because I made the mistake of trying to save my father's life? She shook her head. I don't take charity. I don't take handouts. I pay my own way. It's not charity to accept help when you need it. Isn't it? Nadia's voice rose slightly. What would you call it? What would you expect in return? She saw him flinch and pressed on, unable to stop now that she'd started. I've seen how this works. I've seen what happens when people like me accept help from people like you. We become owned, indebted in ways that have nothing to do with money. Victor stood slowly, his face pale. Is that what you think of me? He asked quietly. You think I would? He stopped, his jaw clenched. I have never, in all the years you've worked for me, made you feel like you were anything less than a valued employee with complete autonomy. Have I? No, Nadia admitted. But this is different. This is personal. And personal debts are the kind that never get repaid. What if I don't want repayment? Victor moved closer, though he stayed on his side of the counter. What if I just want you to be safe? To not kill yourself working 2 jobs because you're too proud to ask for help. It's not about pride, isn't it? He leaned forward, his eyes intense. You're standing here, exhausted, barely able to keep your eyes open, working in a neighborhood where 3 people have been shot in the last month, and you're telling me it's not about pride? Nadia's eyes widened. How do you? Because I looked it up the moment Elias told me where you were, Victor said bluntly. Do you have any idea how dangerous this area is? Do you know what could happen to you walking to the subway at 3 in the morning? I can take care of myself. Can you? His voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through. Because it doesn't look like it from where I'm standing. It looks like you're one missed meal away from collapsing. It looks like you're so exhausted you can barely stand. It looks like you're drowning. And you're so determined to do it alone that you won't even reach for the rope someone's throwing you. The words hit too close to home. Nadia felt her throat tighten, felt the tears she'd been holding back for months start to burn behind her eyes. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice breaking. Why does this matter so much to you? Victor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because watching you destroy yourself is destroying me. The confession hung in the air between them. Nadia stared at him, seeing something in his eyes she'd never allowed herself to acknowledge before. Something that looked like fear, like desperation, like the kind of feeling that made a powerful man sit in the dark waiting for someone to come home. I can't accept your help, she whispered. I can't be dependent on you. Why not? Because then I'll never leave. The words came out before she could stop them. Don't you see? If I let you pay this debt, if I let you fix this, then I'll be tied to you in a way I can't come back from. And when you get tired of me, when you decide you don't need a housekeeper anymore, I'll have nothing. I'll be right back where I started. Except now I'll also be someone who learned to depend on you. Victor's expression shifted, understanding dawning in his eyes. You think I would abandon you, he said slowly. You think I would help you and then just discard you when you're no longer useful. Why wouldn't you? Nadia's voice was barely audible. That's how the world works for people like me. We're only valuable as long as we're needed. Is that what your life has taught you? Victor asked quietly. That you're only worth what you can provide? That the moment you need help, you become disposable? The question cut too deep. Nadia turned away, gripping the edge of the counter to keep herself upright. She felt Victor move around the counter, felt him stop a few feet away, giving her space even now. My mother used to clean houses, he said quietly. Did you know that? Before I made enough money to take care of her, she worked 3 jobs, cleaned offices at night, took in laundry, babysat on weekends. She wouldn't let me help her either. Said she didn't raise me to support her, that she'd take care of herself. His voice went rough. She collapsed from exhaustion on a subway platform, hit her head on the concrete. By the time someone found her and called an ambulance, the damage was done. Nadia turned slowly, seeing the pain in his eyes. She lived for another 3 years, Victor continued, but she was never the same. And every day of those 3 years, I had to live with the knowledge that I could have prevented it. That my pride and her pride combined to create a tragedy that didn't have to happen. He took a step closer. So when I see you killing yourself, when I see you too proud to accept help, I see her. And I can't. His voice broke slightly. I can't watch someone I care about destroy themselves again. I can't go through that twice. Tears spilled down Nadia's cheeks. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be someone who needs help. Then learn. Victor closed the distance between them, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Let me help you learn. Not because you owe me, not because I expect anything in return, but because you deserve to not carry everything alone. The debt is $53,000, Nadia said, the number falling from her lips like a confession. Medical bills from my father's cancer treatment. The interest keeps climbing. I've been making payments, but they barely touch it. At this rate, I'll be paying it off for the next 15 years. Victor's hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. That's it? He asked, and when she looked at him in disbelief, he clarified. I mean, that's the whole amount? There's nothing else. Isn't that enough? Nadia, he said her name like a prayer. That's 3 months of my operating expenses. Less than I spent on the dining room chandelier. He stopped, seeming to realize how his words might sound. What I'm trying to say is that this problem you've been killing yourself over, this thing that's been destroying you, it's solvable. Easily solvable. For you, maybe. Not for me. Then let it be for me. Victor's voice was urgent now. Let me solve this. Let me pay the debt. No, not as a loan. Not as something you have to pay back. As a gift. As someone who cares about you helping someone he cares about. He paused. Or if that's too hard to accept, then as a business investment. I'll pay your debt, and you'll continue working for me under a new contract. Triple your current salary, proper benefits, paid time off. Everything formalized and legal, so you never have to worry about being disposable. Nadia shook her head, overwhelmed. That's too much. I can't. You can. You just have to choose to. Victor's voice softened. I'm not asking you to depend on me. I'm asking you to accept help so that you can eventually stand on your own 2 feet in a real way. Not this half-life you've been living where you're too exhausted to do anything but work. Why? Nadia asked again, searching his face. Why does this matter so much to you? Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being just my housekeeper. You became someone I can't imagine not having in my life. Someone whose smile I look forward to seeing every morning. Someone whose pain I feel in my chest like it's my own. He paused. Because I'm falling in love with you, and watching you suffer is killing me. The words hung in the air, raw and honest and terrifying. Nadia felt like she couldn't breathe, like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. You don't mean that, she whispered. I do. Victor's hands moved from her shoulders to gently cup her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I know the timing is terrible. I know you probably think this is some kind of manipulation or that I'm trying to take advantage of your vulnerability. But I've felt this way for months. I just didn't know how to tell you. And now, seeing you like this, I can't keep it inside anymore. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in Nadia's situation? Nadia closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hands on her face, feeling the sincerity in his words. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from the vulnerability of letting someone in. But she was so tired of carrying everything alone, so tired of being strong. I'm scared, she admitted, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. I'm scared of needing you. I'm scared of what happens if this doesn't work. I'm scared of becoming someone I don't recognize. Then be scared, Victor said gently. Be scared and let me help you anyway. You don't have to know how this ends. You just have to be brave enough to try something different than what you've been doing. Because what you've been doing is killing you. And I won't stand by and watch that happen. Nadia felt something crack inside her. Some final wall of resistance crumbling under the weight of exhaustion and honesty and the simple human need to be seen. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Victor pulled her into his arms, and Nadia let herself collapse against his chest. Let herself cry in a way she hadn't cried in years. He held her tightly, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring words she couldn't quite hear but that sounded like comfort, like safety, like home. They stood like that for a long time, the bakery quiet around them, the city humming beyond the security-barred windows. When Nadia finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her eyes were swollen, but she felt lighter than she had in months. I don't know how to do this, she said again. I don't know how to let someone help me. Then we'll figure it out together, Victor said, one step at a time. The next morning, Victor's lawyer arrived at the penthouse with a stack of papers. Elias was there too, his expression carefully neutral as he watched Nadia review the documents. This is a new employment contract, the lawyer explained, pointing to various sections. It outlines your salary, $200,000 per year, along with full benefits for weeks of paid vacation, sick leave, and a clause that guarantees 1 year of severance pay if your employment is terminated for any reason except gross misconduct. Nadia's hands shook as she held the papers. This is too much, she said for what felt like the 100th time. It's market rate for a household manager in Manhattan, Victor said calmly. He was seated across from her, his expression businesslike, though his eyes were warm. Actually, it's slightly below market rate if you want to be technical about it. And this, she pointed to another section. What's this about an investment account? A separate benefit, Elias interjected. Mr. Hahn is establishing an account in your name with an initial deposit of $100,000. It's yours, completely separate from your employment. It's designed to give you financial security and independence. I can't accept. You can and you will, Victor said firmly. This is non-negotiable, Nadia. I need to know that you have resources that aren't tied to me. I need to know that you're staying because you want to, not because you have to. Nadia looked at the papers, then at Victor, then at Elias, who gave her an encouraging nod. What about the bakery? She asked quietly. Victor's expression shifted slightly. Ruth Alvarez received an offer this morning to sell the building. The buyer is willing to pay 3 times its assessed value, contingent on her remaining as manager with full operational control and a substantial salary increase. She's also been given the option to purchase the building back at the original price at any point in the next 10 years. Nadia stared at him. You bought the building. I invested in a property in an up-and-coming neighborhood, Victor corrected. It's good business. And you just happen to structure the deal so that Ruth stays in control and can buy it back. I'm not a monster, Victor said quietly. I know what that place means to her. I'm not going to take it away. Nadia felt tears prickling her eyes again. She looked down at the contract, at the numbers that represented security, independence, a future that wasn't defined by crushing debt. If I sign this, she said slowly, what changes? Between us, Victor was quiet for a moment. Nothing changes unless you want it to, he said finally. This isn't me trying to buy your affection or create some kind of obligation. This is me trying to fix an imbalance so that if something does develop between us, it's because we both want it. Not because you feel like you owe me. But you already said, I know what I said last night. Victor's voice was gentle. And I meant it. But that doesn't mean you have to feel the same way. It doesn't mean you have to reciprocate. I can live with you not loving me back. What I can't live with is watching you destroy yourself. Elias cleared his throat. If I may, he said quietly. I've known Victor for 20 years. I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. But I've also never seen him handle something with this much integrity. He looked at Nadia. He's giving you power in this situation. The power to choose your own future without the burden of debt or obligation. That's a rare thing. Don't dismiss it because you're afraid. Nadia took a shaky breath and picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the signature line for a long moment. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she signed. Victor released a breath she hadn't realized he'd been holding. Thank you, he said quietly, for trusting me. The lawyer collected the papers and left. Elias lingered for a moment, catching Nadia's eye. My sister was like you, he said quietly. Proud, independent, refused help from anyone. She ended up in the hospital with stress-induced cardiac problems at 35. He paused. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you can't do it alone. Remember that. After he left, Nadia and Victor sat in the living room. The morning light streaming through the windows. The city spread out before them. The silence between them was different now. Not tense, but uncertain, like they were both trying to figure out what came next. I need to call the debt collectors, Nadia said finally. Tell them the account will be paid in full. Already done, Victor said. The payment will process today. You'll receive written confirmation of the zero balance by the end of the week. Nadia absorbed this. And Ruth, her lawyer is reviewing the offer this morning. I expect she'll accept. So it's just done? Just like that. Victor turned to look at her. The debt is done. The immediate crisis is done. But the rest? He paused. The rest is up to you. You have financial security now. You have options. You can stay here and work for me, or you can take that investment account and go anywhere in the world. You can pursue education, start a business, travel. Whatever you want. You're free to choose. And us? Nadia asked quietly. What about what you said last night? I meant every word, Victor said. But I'm not going to pressure you. Take your time. Figure out what you want without the burden of debt or obligation hanging over your head. And if you decide you want something more than an employer-employee relationship, we'll talk about it then. Nadia studied his face, seeing the sincerity there, the vulnerability. This man who could make criminals sweat with a look was sitting here offering her complete freedom, even though it might mean losing her. What if I'm not ready for a long time? She asked. Then I'll wait. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll accept that. Victor's voice was steady. I'd rather have you in my life as a friend or employee than not have you at all. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more stories about love, redemption, and second chances. We post new content every week. 3 months passed in a strange, gentle rhythm. Nadia quit the bakery. Ruth had accepted Victor's offer with tears of gratitude and immediately offered Nadia a management position for whenever she wanted it. Nadia started sleeping 8 hours a night. She gained back the weight she'd lost. The circles under her eyes faded. She enrolled in business administration classes at a community college, thinking maybe she'd like to understand the kind of work Victor did, or maybe start something of her own someday. Victor kept his distance in the ways that mattered. He was kind but not overly familiar. He respected her space. He never pushed. But Nadia saw the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. She saw the way his face lit up when she smiled. She felt the care in every gesture, every small consideration. She also felt her own walls beginning to crumble. It started small. Appreciating his dry humor, looking forward to their morning coffee conversations, finding excuses to be in the same room. Then it grew into something harder to deny. She'd catch herself watching him work, admiring his focus. She'd find herself wanting to share her day with him, seeking his opinion on her coursework. She'd lie in bed at night thinking about his hands on her face in the bakery, his voice saying he was falling in love with her. One evening, she found him in his office, reviewing financial reports. She knocked on the doorframe and he looked up with a smile. "Can I interrupt?" she asked. "Always." He closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. Nadia crossed the room and perched on the edge of his desk, her heart hammering. "I've been thinking," she said. "That's usually dangerous." She smiled despite her nerves. "I've been thinking about what you said that night at the bakery." Victor's expression grew serious. "Nadia, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to." She took a breath. "But I want to. I've spent the last 3 months learning how to not carry everything alone. Learning how to accept help. Learning that needing someone doesn't make me weak." She paused. "And I've also spent the last 3 months realizing that I don't just need you. I want you, in my life, as more than my employer, as more than my friend." Victor stood slowly, hope and caution warring in his expression. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I don't want you to feel pressured." "I'm not." Nadia reached out and took his hand. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Not because I owe you. Not because I'm dependent on you. But because somewhere along the way you became the person I most want to talk to. The person whose opinion matters most. The person I think about when I wake up and before I sleep." She smiled tremulously. "I think I'm falling in love with you too." Victor's expression cracked, vulnerability flooding his features. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that," he said roughly. He cupped her face with both hands, the gesture achingly familiar. "I love you. Not the version of you that you think you need to be. Not the strong, independent woman who doesn't need anyone. But the real you. The one who's messy and scared and still learning how to trust. That's who I love." "I'm still figuring this out," Nadia warned. "I'm still going to struggle with accepting help sometimes. I'm still going to be stubborn and proud." "Good," Victor said. "I don't want you to change who you are. I just want you to let me stand beside you while you're being stubborn and proud." He kissed her then, slow and gentle, and Nadia felt something inside her finally settle. This was what safety felt like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of someone who would stand with you while you faced it. When they pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "Move in with me," he said. "Not as my employee, as my partner. We'll redraft the contract. Separate your professional role from our personal relationship. You'll have complete autonomy, complete independence. But please, let me come home to you every night." Nadia smiled through happy tears. "I'm already here. Then stay." Victor's voice was raw with emotion. "Choose to stay because you want to, not because you have to." "I choose to stay," Nadia whispered. "I choose you." 6 months later, Victor proposed in Ruth's Corner Bakery after closing. Ruth had arranged it, shooing out the last customers early and dimming the lights. Nadia came in for what she thought was just a visit with her former boss and found Victor there instead, standing in the middle of the space where their lives had irrevocably changed. "No ring yet," he said, holding up his empty hands. "Because I wanted you to choose it. I wanted you to have a say in every part of this." Nadia laughed, tears already falling. "You're supposed to surprise me. I know. But I'd rather give you a choice." Victor stepped closer. So I'm asking, will you choose this? Will you choose us? Will you choose to build a life with someone who will never try to own you, who will always respect your independence, but who loves you enough to stand beside you through everything? Yes, Nadia said, not needing to think about it. Yes to all of it. They kissed in the bakery that had witnessed Nadia's lowest point, surrounded by the smell of bread and coffee, and it felt like the most perfect full-circle moment possible. Ruth came out from the back, wiping her eyes and cursing about allergies, and insisted on making them a celebratory meal. As they sat in the corner booth eating pie and talking about the future, Nadia thought about how far she'd come. From a woman drowning in debt and exhaustion, hiding her struggles out of pride, to someone who'd learned that accepting help wasn't weakness. That love didn't mean losing yourself. That partnership meant choosing each other freely, again and again. What are you thinking? Victor asked, squeezing her hand. That I spent so long being afraid of needing someone, Nadia said. And it turns out the thing I should have been afraid of was trying to do everything alone. You were brave, Victor said quietly. It takes courage to survive the way you did, but it also takes courage to trust someone enough to stop surviving alone and start living instead. Ruth raised her coffee cup. To living, she said, and to being brave enough to accept love when it shows up. They clinked cups, and Nadia felt the last piece of weight she'd been carrying finally lift. She was free, not because her debt was paid, but because she'd learned that freedom wasn't about never needing anyone. It was about choosing who you needed and being chosen in return. The story could have ended differently. Nadia could have kept working 2 jobs until she collapsed. Victor could have tried to exert control instead of offering partnership. Pride could have destroyed them both. But instead, they'd found something rare. A love built on respect, choice, and the understanding that helping someone doesn't mean owning them. As they walked home through the New York night, hand in hand, Nadia thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago, exhausted, desperate, alone. And she thought about the woman she was becoming, someone who'd learned that strength sometimes looked like vulnerability, that independence sometimes required accepting help, that love, when done right, didn't cage you, to set you free. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What moments resonated most with you? Have you ever struggled with accepting help? We love hearing from our community, and your engagement helps us create more content like this. Until next time, remember, true strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about choosing the right people to walk beside you.